Sure.
So what else did you learn? Did you do about keeping it simple?
Well, it's also having to moving on to kind of the next point is what worked, and what worked for me was working with people who I already knew, people in my sphere, people who already know me, like me, trust me, and being in touch with them. And I do that largely with email, but also phone calls and running into them at places around town, and just staying in touch with them keeps me in the flow. So when they think of real estate, they think of me, and the business I did with my sphere last year, both with them directly and with their referrals, amounted to 74% of my income. So
you introduced a word that I'd like you to talk about a little bit, if you would, and that's being in the flow. So what does that mean, being in the flow?
Well, it's
simply.
It's easy even for people as wonderful to know as you and I.
Thank you.
People will sometimes forget that we exist.
Right.
Or if they happen to run into somebody else more recently or more frequently or both in the same business, and then they have a need, or a friend of theirs has a need, the first person who comes to their mind needs to be me.
Yeah,
so
at least one or two.
If they get in the flow with somebody else in their life, neighbor, the rec center, the church, the shopping center, wherever they happen to go. So I just want to be in the flow, and usually that means just staying in touch.
Yeah, that being in the flow principle is a key issue here that I want to stress, underline, highlight, because when Gene and I get together, do we talk business, Gene?
Lots.
Yeah, but do we talk other things too?
Lots.
Yeah, so I know about him, he knows about me, I know about what's going on with he and his two children, I know about his family, I know about his extended family, he knows about me, I'm an outdoor adventure guy, he knows when I'm taking a trip.
And you even know about my other two children.
I do. And he might say, so when we were together last, you said you were going fishing. How was it? How'd you do? That's being in the flow, folks. Do I try to sell him something? No. If I were doing real estate, would I try to sell him something? No. What would I do? I honestly care about his life. And that's I think a message from Gene and I both to you, is honestly care about their lives. Don't try to sell them something. Don't try to ask for a referral. Don't ask for a referral every time, at least that's my view. You may disagree. Because if every time you call me or every time I see you, you're asking me to give you a referral or to send you business, pretty soon I'm going to quit taking your phone calls. So the second point is focus on what worked. Gene learned that, what was it, 74% of his business came from his sphere. And Gene, how big is your sphere?
I honestly don't know. The email sphere is 350 some.
Okay.
And then there are probably that many more who I don't have email addresses for, and that's something I'm going to work on in 2012.
Email or touching them in a different way?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good answer. So for 350 people, Gene did the volume that he did, which was, as we said, a fairly significant number according to most real estate agents. So the idea that you need a massive 5,000 person database is silly. 350 people that he's emailing, others that he talks to, I think you ought to hear those numbers. I read a book last night, or I didn't read a book, I read an excerpt from a book in Fortune magazine called The Startup of You by Reid Hoffman, which I mentioned to you earlier this morning.
Yeah.
And Reid said, he's the founder of LinkedIn, and Reid said something I thought was pretty cool. He said, while 6 degrees of separation, and as a reminder for you, according to the theory of 6 degrees of separation, with 6 contacts you can find anybody on the planet. Academically, that's true. You can do that. Reid says you only need 3 degrees of separation, and if you have, I know 45 people who know 45 people each, who know 35 people each, which is pretty reasonable actually. That's 70,000 people. Could you do enough business out of that without a cold call?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. So think about the database size that you have, and there's an implication here that Gene has said without saying it directly, is you have to have a database, and you have to have in my view, and I know Gene's view, you have to have a digital database.
Yeah.
So, okay, what else on focusing on what worked?
Well, I guess I talked about the email, and I have this sort of random email newsletter that Reg affectionately calls Systematic Spontaneity. It's systematic because I have the names all together and I have it in a database, an electronic database that I can use for mailing. But it's rather than on the second Tuesday of every month,
Right.
It's whenever I have something that I think is timely and valuable that needs to be shared, and that usually amounts to 3, 4, 5 bullet points. I send out something I call Gene's Picks. It's an electronic newsletter, goes out by email, and it is part of what keeps me in the flow with people. And I get good feedback from folks who will just randomly reply now and then and say, not in the market right now, but I really like getting this. It helps me know what's going on. Right. And so I'll always add value. It's not recipes, and it's not a great place to go for a hike. All those things are wonderful. I eat every day. The recipes are nice and hikes are nice. But I'm a real estate guy and I want people to think of me that way. So I provide statistics, I provide interest rate information, news, trends, stuff about the market. For my investors, they like to know what's going on with vacancy rate and are rents going up or down. And those kinds of pieces of information that people snag and get a piece of me before they delete it.
Value added, key point, he's offering information to the recipient. Second thing is the subject line is led by Gene's Picks, right?
Yeah.
That's the first words.
Yeah.
Have you started adding things at the back of that subject line about some content?
Not about content. It's sometimes it started out as Gene's Picks because it started out as I've seen these that I think are great deals that you might be interested in as an investor kind of thing. So sometimes it's Gene's Picks, sometimes it's Gene's Real Estate News, sometimes it's Gene's this or that, but it's always Gene's something. So there's a consistent branding, a recognition, and an expectation that there's value there. So I think even if I don't get readership on a particular issue, if you will, there's the touch. It's recognition, Gene's still in the real estate business, delete, or I'll stuff it away and read it later, but it's that important touch.
Well, and I think that's a good point, because in order to, we're not going to talk about achieving top-of-mind awareness. To maintain top-of-mind awareness, Gene's got the right idea. You just send things out to people that touch their awareness for a few seconds. If you were to do direct mail, with direct mail, you get, according to the Direct Marketing Association and the USPS and some other surveys that have been done, when you receive a piece of direct mail, you get the recipient's brain for 4 to 8 seconds, depending on what's going on. And frankly, folks, that's all that is necessary. People want to know that you're still out there, you haven't left the business like 87% of their friends, and that you're doing business. And because Gene also puts in his emails, I think, things that have been successfully concluded. I mean, buyers and sellers that have...
Yeah, haven't done as much of that as I could incorporate.
Right, but that's another thing, because that would help them know that you're being successful. Yeah. Okay.
The last thing in the what works is most multiple listing services have great tools for saving searches or for your client saved searches, right. Prospect, systematic, overnight automatic searches and send out emails about listings that are brand new or price changed or back on market and so on. And I've used that extensively. I don't know how many dozens of people I have at any one time with searches set up that get emails more than once a week overnight when something has changed. And I use that for sellers too, because sellers like to see and need to see new listings in their neighborhood, price changes in their neighborhood. So without me having to do that, a lot of people are receiving those touches from me. It appears to be from me, and anybody not using that functionality should be doing so.
Agreed.